Welcome to the Afghanistan Project podcast. I'm your host, Beth Bailey, and what is the first of probably a series of What Happens Now episodes, now that we've had presidential elections and things are really looking to be shaken up quite a bit. I've got my first expert guest on, Jason Howk. You guys are probably familiar with Jason from many previous episodes, but if you are not, I'd like to give you a brief bio on all of the amazing things that Jason has been involved in as far as Afghanistan is concerned in the past and into today. So Jason is a U.S. Army veteran whose service spanned really major developments of our Afghanistan adventure, from supporting the early development of the Afghan National Army back in 2002 to overseeing interagency teams of civilians who worked to establish enduring security in the region in 2013. Jason's now the president of Global Friends of Afghanistan, which is a really incredible organization of Afghan and international leaders who are searching for paths to a democratic and peaceful future for the country in the aftermath of the Taliban's rule. Jason's also a writer, a musical collaborator, and an adjunct professor of Islamic Studies at the U.S. Air Force Special Operations School. Jason, you have just the most incredible accumulation of things that you've done, and it's always an honor to have you on and to hear from all of your amazing experience.
That's very kind. Yeah, happy to be here and look forward to thinking about what comes next.
Yeah, and I think you are the person to talk to in this regard. You really have your finger on the pulse. You know so many people who are so intimately involved in trying to kind of reestablish what has been lost from Afghanistan. So I guess my first question for you, is what does happen next? What's the word? I've heard so many different things about what we can expect from a Trump administration, number two, in terms of Afghanistan.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. A lot of things get said on the campaign trail that don't really translate into policy in the U.S. government because they can't, or the facts won't allow you to do what you wanted to do. Reality kind of hits you in the face when you get in there. So what's happening right now? The president-elect's team is going into what they call a presidential transition. So they're occupying an alternate White House in D.C., and they are sorting through personnel and bringing folks into the fold. I imagine Trump will be staying out of town because it's too tricky to have two presidents in D.C. at one time. But his team is going to be assembling there. They've already named a chief of staff. There's a rumor that the National Security Advisor has been picked, with Congressman Mike Waltz from Florida. So we'll see. That it's early days. They've got about 70 days to pick their entire basic team you need to be able to launch off with on Inauguration Day. So there'll be a lot of resume work. There'll be a lot of sorting and interviews, security clearance processing. Like, there's a lot of mundane stuff that has to happen before you get to talk about what future policies do you care about. So there'll be a moment. There's different cells in these transition teams. I was in the 2016 one. So, there's going to be a State Department team, a DOD team, and a National Security Council team. And they're going to look at different policies. There may be a few policies that are written up that are day one things, that they want the president to sign, make these executive orders happen. But they've gone through this once before, so this is something unusual. I'm sure it was different in the 1800s when we had this happen last. We'll see. They may not even get to Afghanistan while they're in the transition. This may be something that happens once they're in office after Inauguration Day, and they actually start having some cabinet meetings and sit down and think about it. But there's probably some ideas floating around, and there were a bunch on the campaign trail. Who knows which ones are going to be actually actionable? But there's always a glimmer of hope. We know the last administration did not make much in way of changes to their policy, and it was disappointing to just about everybody that cared about Afghanistan, and especially the people of Afghanistan. So I think we have to give some space here for this team to figure out what's feasible and what they want to do, what they can do.
Sure. And I mean, they're coming in at a time of incredible chaos around the world. You have Gaza and Israel and Lebanon and Iran, and you have Ukraine and Russia. In the midst of all of that, yeah. I think a lot of people would say, well, Afghanistan isn't that important. But I don't believe that that's true, and I want you to weigh in. How important is Afghanistan to the U.S. right now and to Trump, do you think?
I think it's important in a couple of different ways. It is, first off, we'll go with national security. It is worse now than it was before September 11th. There are more terrorist groups on the ground. You can look at any of the open source reporting on this. I know the U.S. government's being really quiet about it, but if you look at the open source reports from people who have, especially folks who've been in the intel community, who've been in the DoD, and still have connections in that area, or are still talking to the former NDS folks from the last government, it is a hot mess of terrorist groups. That when it opened up as an open market again with no restrictions, a lot of different terrorist organizations moved in there, pretended to fight each other, really just to be able to have space, open camps, run more children through, these brainwashing camps, and start training more terrorist groups. So, from that national security point of view, it's a hot mess. We saw this before. We know how this ends. There already have been strikes that started from there. I think there will be more. There's possible connection to one of the assassination attempts on candidate Trump recently. So there's a lot going on there on the national security side. That should be in itself important to the United States. There are a lot of wanted terrorists there with bounties on their head that we have done nothing about for the last 3.5 years. And I think that's probably the one that should scare people the most into taking some kind of action. Although you don't want to act on fear, but hey, let's think about it. Another September 11th would be absolutely devastating to this country. And it will change the world even more than it changed it last time. So I think getting ahead of that's important. From a human rights perspective, the gender apartheid system that the Taliban has set up is absolutely crushing the women and girls of Afghanistan. And you've talked to a lot of them, and I have done as well. And all of the teammates on Global Friends of Afghanistan are constantly working on this issue and trying to advocate to get gender apartheid codified into a law that the international community can use as leverage. But why is that important? It's not just Afghanistan. This model of gender apartheid is now shifting all around the areas in which these terrorists flock. So I just saw some reports today, last couple of days, on Libya. We know it's still bad in Iran. It's not going to get any better there as well. And across Africa, we're seeing different countries working on this issue. So it will spread. It will cause more and more destroyed generations. And it's not just the women and girls who get crushed by gender apartheid. It's all the boys who are going to grow up in the families where that exists, because then you get a bunch of young men who don't understand how to interact with women and girls, and they are ripe for the picking by terrorist organizations who want to brainwash them and say, look, no, you're great, men are the top of the food chain, and we run everything. Come join us and you'll have 5 brides. And it really creates a very wide open pool of people to pick from for terrorist organizations, where if they're raised, young men that are raised in a home that is mostly, we'll say, normal, is not being a gender apartheid home, it's a different scenario. I mean, those people can still be recruited. Terrorists, come from all walks of life, but this is going to be crushing. We're watching Afghanistan. The young boys are being brainwashed into a mindset that's only going to hurt the country. So I think those two are the big issues for me: national security and a human rights view, but not just affecting Afghanistan. And then there's the third piece that I think might appeal even more to President Trump. There's the economic piece. We left Afghanistan before the United States ever made any deals to help them on extraction of their natural resources. They're sitting on trillions of dollars of natural resources, and China is now going to tap that. China is going to take that dirt cheap. They're going to steal it, basically just take it at theft costs. They're not going to use Afghan labor unless it's to die in a mine. They're going to use Chinese labor. They're going to use Chinese shipping. They're going to make a lot of money on it. They're going to create jobs for their own country. And all the stuff they're digging up and taking from the mountains is what's needed in this technological world. So we have basically just handed the country's resources over to a terrorist group who's selling them cheap as you can to China. So 3 big issues. We don't want China to have more access to the natural resources of the cyber age than we do. And here's a place that had it in abundance. And we just broke off our friendship and said, the heck with it. So it won't benefit the people of Afghanistan. It won't benefit the people of America who've done the most to try to bring peace to that country so they could have a normal system and a normal economy again and make money on their own and have friends across the West. They are now kind of stuck with what Pakistan really wants them to have, which is a good China relationship, so that China will take care of Pakistan. Absolute hot mess. So those are the ones that I think should kind of drive where we go. But I don't know when this is going to reach the policy making level of discussions. It could be months. It could be a year. I mean, we don't know.
My question then becomes, how does it work, right? Because you've got all these groups like NRF and AUF, and they are all ready and willing to go act as, agents of chaos against the Taliban. In fact, they are right now, attacking the Taliban. But is that the path that he goes on, where it's almost like empowering the Muj against the Russians again and starting this whole cycle over again? Or what path do you see? What paths are available, and what do you suppose would be the optimal one for the U.S. to take?
I think there is the easy path, which is to just send money and arms to any of the martial resistance forces. Mm-hmm. But I think that easy path brings us to the same place, September 11th. Mm-hmm. You're going to have multiple groups that are not coordinating with each other who will eventually start fighting over the resources, if they ever can take out the Taliban, who are still going to have tons of support from other terrorist groups and from people in Pakistan. So that's going to be a tough thing to do, it, even if they were all unified, let alone doing it piecemeal. So in the end, you're either going to get them all killed, or if they do take out, the Taliban in a number of provinces and start setting up a rump state to build upon and take the country over, they're going to be fighting over territory. It's not going to have nobody's overseeing it. So I think that's the easy path, but probably also the path back to disaster. There will be a lot of loss of life, and it may not result in any change. They will fight until they're dead, and then Pakistan will put in another, Islamist terrorist group to run the country, because that's what they want. And Afghans will feel I think they'd be morally defeated forever if they did this on their own without anybody's real help, and they lost. So I think a smarter route, hopefully the more optimal route, continue to create, grasp onto what Afghans are doing. There are tons. There are a number of Afghans around the world who are organizing political bodies, so that they're in diplomatic bodies. So if you can help them organize, it doesn't have to be America. You could ask France or Canada to help them organize, so it's not our footprints and handprints all over it, so that they can create some kind of government in exile, unify their party, come up with what they want their future constitution to look like. I've seen drafts of this. They're already on the road to this. So it's just a matter of us putting our arm around them and helping other countries to recognize there is another path. There are a lot of anti-Taliban and non-Taliban Afghans. The majority of Afghanistan they know what they want in the future. Let them come together with the support of the world to figure out what's the best way to disempower the Taliban and get them out of there. And it's probably going to end up being a lot of economic sanctions, a lot of no-fly lists, individual sanctions on people, sanctions on organizations. I'm sure they're going to have to organize some type of armed forces beneath that political body, but it has to be a unified approach so they don't squabble in the end. And I think that's the way we could probably support them the best. It's got to be something they come up with. If we come up with a plan, it's not going to work. I was there in the beginning. We didn't come up with the plan in Afghanistan. Trust me, that was the Afghans' plan. But we were in there, trying to watch them build it on the fly, and that's not a good idea. They have spent 3.5 years designing and talking about what they want the future to look like. Help them get that model, diplomatically and through democracy approved. Let the people of Afghanistan say, we want that. We would rather have a simple constitution based on human rights and representative government, and where the mayor is elected, and so are the provincial governors. Whatever they want, let them explain it, let them do it. But we can help them diplomatically to get that through, and then they can decide if they need to militarily eject them or if they want to invite other countries to help to do so. That's probably the path we should take. But the biggest thing we can do on that path, America needs to lean on Pakistan. Unless we can convince Pakistan to change their views on national security, they're never going to let the Afghan people retake their country and throw out the terrorist organizations. They won't, because it benefits them to have Afghanistan sitting there like a fifth province. Even if there are terrorist issues, they can absorb the blood loss. Pakistan will play this game for as long as they have to. So we've got a great ally in India that can help us persuade Pakistan. India loves Trump. They were going crazy last time he was president. Why not take advantage of that? India has another foe. That's China. Well, it's probably good if America and India were to come to an agreement on what the region needs to look like in that part of Asia. So we had a good partner to work with. And just tell Pakistan, you're either going to be dealing with us and making peace with India, or you can stick with China, and we're going to hem you in. We're going to help Afghanistan get back. And that's going to be it. They will lose Baluchistan. They'll lose the frontier provinces. So I think we've got to be a little more creative, a little more aggressive. But this doesn't require boots on the ground. If anything, it requires saving money on not spending a lot of money in Afghanistan and not spending a lot of money in Pakistan. Just say, look, we're done. If you don't want to play games, you don't want to help out, we're going to leave you. And good luck with China, because they're tired of paying for your junk and your crazy ideas. So
it seems like in the past we've always been reticent to push Pakistan because of it being a nuclear armed nation. I mean, do you see that being an issue to how does that work?
I think Pakistan's in a tough spot now. The biggest reason we couldn't push them too hard is because we needed the logistical passage. We couldn't get to Afghanistan because Russia closed off the northern routes and we couldn't go through Iran. We can't go through China. So Pakistan was the only option. Well, that's gone. We don't need that route. Mm-hmm. We absolutely, if we want Afghanistan to be able to, we don't need it. We're not hauling in a bunch of stuff to sustain a U.S. military and NATO footprint. That's a huge footprint. There isn't one now. What could be done now can be done with a lot of sniper teams from the Afghan forces, and it's not too hard to take out the Taliban in a long distance, province by province, and just melt away. They just need some of that help to get it done, and we could provide some of that. And we probably should snatch a few of those terrorists up ourselves. I mean, we are pretty good at going into a country and snatching people up. I would be looking really closely right now at how do I get all the U.S. citizens out, especially ones that are in prisons, and how do I grab some of these terrorists with bounties on their head. I would be looking really seriously at how would I execute that? Do I have the right intel to do that? And are our forces prepared to do that on a moment's notice? Because that might be step one of letting the Taliban know the game has changed. We're going to arrest, Haqqani. We're going to get our prisoners back now. And there'll just be a bunch of dead Taliban around the prison.
Jason, are you telling me that we shouldn't be sending New York Times writers to go interview Siraj and that we should have rolled him up instead? Are you really suggesting that? No, I'm being really sarcastic.
That came up earlier today at a talk. Like the most frustrating thing that somehow we couldn't find the gumption to take Haqqani off the battlefield when he's wandering around in two of our biggest Gulf allies countries, and we just let them do it.
Yep.
I don't know who struck the deal and what that deal says or what dirt this guy's got on somebody, but my God, that was the easy one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, remember Germany, some Talib made his way to Germany by using his nom de guerre or whatever to travel, or his regular name. I don't know which one he was using, but he made it to Germany and he's like proselytizing for the Taliban in Germany, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. And it's going to take, I'm sad to say, it's going to take something serious for them to care again. But I do hope that your method makes sense. You're right. This has to be an Afghan-led effort. It cannot be the proposition of an outside force. It has to be unifying under the Afghans. And at that point, the NRF and the AUF can come together and form that core of a military unit rather than, separate groups that are, like, it has to be a united effort. Afghans have to decide what they want. Do they want to let the Taliban continue? And how long are they going to let that happen before they coalesce? I'm curious. Something I keep seeing is, footage of, to turn topics around, footage of Trump saying that he wants, or President-elect Trump, I should say, he wants all these former leaders who made the decisions of the withdrawal to put their resignations on his desk. And do you think that that's just, hot air coming out of him, or do you think that he's really serious about wanting to see that happen?
Yeah, that's an interesting one for me. Most of the people who made the decision to leave are appointees, so they will be gone. They're putting in their resignation right now. They're all looking for their next job on some board somewhere or some think tank because they're all gone. There'll be 2,000 people that just get their pink slip before Inauguration Day. So they started melting away really quickly from the Obama team as Trump's transition team was coming in. They were like, hey, to go hand off with this person because they're leaving now. Like, they don't wait around to Inauguration Day in some of these positions. They're just getting on to their next gig. So I think most of them will be gone. If he's referring to military leaders that were involved in it, again, these were political decisions. This was the Biden-Harris team and their national security advisors. I don't even think SecDef was for the withdrawal. So I think everybody below SecDef said, no, we got to keep a counterterrorism footprint. So I'm not sure what that's about, but I hope we don't get rid of Afghanistan experts who didn't have the power to say no, because when it's a political decision, you just have to do it. That's the job.
Right. And I mean, the point can also be made that it was under Trump that we had the Doha Agreement, and that's the first step to, I hope he doesn't think that was a grand decision, because and granted, it could have also been used to, we could have said, this is not being followed anymore, and therefore we will not honor it any longer. But it was, hopefully it doesn't bring back Zalmai. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I think there was a signal there when he announced preemptively that Haley and Pompeo would not be welcome in the administration. I mean, Pompeo definitely owns the Doha agreement. He could have stepped in at any moment and overrode Khalilzad and said, "No, we're done," or they're not upholding it. So let's scrap this, cancel this. I hope. I don't see President Trump putting any weight on that, and I hope day one he says that forget that. You broke that long ago. Rip it up. Whatever you have in front of you, that's done.
Yeah.
There's no more negotiation. You had your chance.
And I think too, I've been really clear about the fact that I wanted to see Biden take accountability for Afghanistan, but I think my point of view is when he's out of office, time done. The witch hunt needs to be over, and it needs to be a history hunt. It needs to be a, how did this happen and how do we let it never happen again? But also, it's time to look at the future.
Yeah.
Because there is no, in terms of politically attacking the Afghanistan decisions, let's look at how do we fix. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that front? Where does the reckoning for Afghanistan play in now?
It's definitely history now. I mean, you could task the Afghanistan War Commission to, take a look at X, Y, and Z if there's something that's not being covered in there. But I agree, the administration's gone, so you've got to start moving forward. And historians will be very quick to. We've got all the data. Everybody knows who was in what position and what happened. And in the end, it was a Biden decision. So, buck does stop there. And the rest of the folks are going to be gone.
Yeah. And my point with that has always been, too, that it wasn't just the Biden decision, because whoever made that decision, it was going to be hard. I mean, that's not an excuse. A lot of people use that as an excuse, and I don't intend it that way, but it was what happened after that decision for me that really solidified my disgust with the way that Afghanistan was handled, is that
Yeah.
there was never accountability taken, and every point we tried to foist that blame elsewhere, and no, and there
Yeah.
were still so many traumas radiating out from there. And so that, I guess, leads me to another point of this. We still have so many veterans groups, so many civilian groups, so many. I'm thinking of Amy Sins down in New Orleans, who does disaster relief but now is helping Afghan families with P1 P2, the USRAP. There are a lot of different things up in the air still.
Yeah.
How important is it that those things get continued in the future administration? That'll be my first part of that question. How important is that?
I think it's very important. It's the big promise. I was shopping with my wife today at Lowe's getting paint, and I got a phone call from somebody who worked high in the government who had a case of two women who were being abused by the Taliban and were human rights related, and they were they're being hunted and abused now. How do we get them out? Where do we take them to? I mean, this is still every day. People are realizing there's another poor Afghan woman or man being brutalized by the Taliban. I think it's super critical. It's a promise we make as a United States government when we send our people abroad, whether they're intel, diplomats, military aid, whatever. We send them abroad to partner with another country and make friends with them. We've made the promise at that point that if they are good to us and they take care of us and they help us and they protect us, we should owe them some friendship, some loyalty. And so I think that's a critical one. If we ever want to have a partner again in a war, that we have got to show that we can do better as a nation. We can do better than we have done in the last 3.5 years. It has been really bad. As you said, there are way too many citizens who have many other full-time jobs still trying to figure out how to evacuate people and how to get them through the immigration process and how to get them into work visas and how to get them into jobs. I mean, it shouldn't be this hard. And a lot of these people are very well vetted. Unlike what happened on the airfield during the evacuation where it got chaotic and people weren't vetted. And we did have people come over and, wander off into third countries into the U.S. that probably should not have, and, absolutely should not have. But, the ones that we're looking at now, these are very well vetted people. These are folks who worked with us for a long time and they're just being hunted and killed. So even if we can just get them to a third country, America is owed a lot of favors by a lot of countries. At least get them to a third country, get them somewhere where they're safe, and then let them figure out where to go next. And I think I don't remember who it was. There's a European country that basically said, if any Afghan women want to come here, your refugee status, your asylum status is golden. We get it. You don't have to tell us anymore. If you're a woman and you want to come here, I mean, I think we almost need to be at that point. Do we need to evacuate the majority of the women so that they can have an education and be safe and not be forced and raped by the Taliban and other terrorists to create, young new terrorists? We've got to make sure this is as good as possible. If they need to get out, if they're stuck in a third country, if they're separated, I have some good friends whose families are in India and they work their butts off, have 3 jobs in DC to send money to India to take care of their family. And these are people who risked their lives for us, who literally got shot and lived beside us in battle. We have got to have enough honor and loyalty left, or our military will struggle, and especially the intel community will struggle mightily in every future endeavor to get anybody to trust us that we will reciprocate friendship and care for them. They do it for us.
Yeah, and I think there have been so many efforts that have just not gone anywhere in the last 3 years. The AAA, the Afghan Adjustment Act. It's been so hard to get additional special immigrant visas, which, I'm hoping that changes. Maybe this will be the time that changes, when we can get our former Afghan military allies the ability to apply for SIV, and all those women that we convinced to join the Afghan military who are currently ineligible at least get, if we can't get all Afghan women, you better damn well get the ones who put their lives on the line. I mean, some of the most horrid stories I heard in the beginning of my coverage were of former Afghan policewomen being raped by the Taliban, because that's their tool of, it's not just the physical assault, it's taking away their agency, because now you're trash, basically, is what they're saying. And your people aren't going to love you anymore, aren't going to care for you anymore, because you have been sullied. Your everything about you has been turned to dirt because of what we just did to you. And I mean, we have really left horrors in our wake and haven't done the right things to fix them. And it doesn't just matter for this conflict either. I mean, now that we're looking at Iraq and Syria and the SIV program there, like, all of these things matter. We really have been a poor ally. And I think the Afghans got the brunt of our anger when things didn't, when the government collapsed. We blamed it on the Afghans. And it's like, hold on. No, that's not a correct observation. I don't know. I'm kind of going off on tangents here, but
I agree with you.
It's important that we look at it from a holistic thing, not just, so maybe I'm wrong about saying we need to move forward. I think we need to move forward with knowledge of what needs to be done.
Find the holes in the system and fix them and move on. That's what we've got to definitely do. And that's the easy way to do it. These people that are highly vetted, I mean, it might cost 5 plane tickets, but bring the soldier, the State Department worker, the intel person in front of the judge with the person, say, this is how I'm vetting him. And the judge goes, good enough for you, good enough for me. Next, here's your green card. Get to work. Just something to speed up the process. Just grab a couple of judges and set up a court just to rack these through. I mean, we're only talking maybe a couple 100,000 people at the most. This doesn't take forever. A lot of these could probably be done by paper. And if you need it, bring in the person who's vetted them. Say, yes, I know these people. I know who they are. I've been to their home in Afghanistan to eat meals with them. My child is named after this person. I mean, we are tight. This is 20 years of relationships. It's not like we're trying to bring strangers in here. I mean, I get it. The ones who cut on the planes that we don't know about, that's going to take some time. But if they're in the human rights community, if were beside us as SIVs and interpreters for 5 years, if they've got gunshot wounds and they were standing beside us, then let's get them to work, because this is the most entrepreneurial group of people you'll ever see. I mean, I know you've seen it. When you watch Afghans come to America and get into Canada as well, I mean, they are quick. They are quick to get to work, to make money, to get 2 or 3 jobs, to get their kids in school. They don't mess around. They know what this opportunity is. They've lived through, some of them, 40, 50 years of hell, depending on how old they are. They know what this opportunity is. Now, do we have to make sure there are no terrorists that come in, and no, radical Islamists who want to brainwash kids or, stab people or whatever? Yes, that's important. But those should be obvious too. Nobody is standing up to vet them. Well, why doesn't he have one person in America who can vouch for him? Oh, he slipped onto the plane. Okay, different line.
Yeah, all I know is the current system is not working. It's such a disaster to see. And it's just, you would think that by now it would be slowing down, but I feel like I'm seeing more. I got a video this week from a young man who, the Taliban had come to his home, and it was terrifying. And then I got another, a group of pictures from somebody I care about, and they were showing me, the brother of the Afghan who had come to America, and his brother had been beaten to the point that he was in a hospital bed. And this doesn't end. It hasn't ended. No. It's not going to end. The Taliban, this is Afghanistan, tensions and hates, they go back way long. Long. This is not like, I don't like you because you put out the wrong political party's flag. This is not that. This is very different. And
Yeah, the Taliban are paranoid people. You know that as an organization, terrorists are paranoid. They are going to kill anybody they think is a threat, man, woman, or child. They are not going to stop until they feel they have wiped all the possible threats out.
Well, and they know who the threats are. I mean, look at who
Yeah.
they target the most.
Yep.
Women are the biggest threat to them
Yeah.
because their participation in society just represents something abhorrent to them. It means that they are not able to clamp down the way that they want to. I mean, now women can't even talk to each other. They are a very insecure group. Who, what voices should, because if we want the president elect to be listening to Afghan voices right now and hearing from the Afghan people what they need, who do you think he needs to be listening to right now? I mean, you have your finger on the pulse there with so many incredible Afghan leaders, that you are listening to. So,
Yeah, I don't want to name any names because that will cause them trouble, and cause trouble for their families in Afghanistan. But groups like Global Friends of Afghanistan, No One Left Behind, some of the other groups that have been pulling people out, we know refugees and folks in diaspora who are younger, who want an inclusive future. We know who these folks are. We work with them all the time. It would be nothing to set up a meeting. Global Friends of Afghanistan or any other organization could put a dozen Afghans in the room from all different walks of life and backgrounds who are ready to move forward and can explain what's going on and what they want for help. I mean, they're out there. A lot of them are in the DC area. That's where a lot of Afghans have settled. So it would not be hard to get people together to have that discussion and see what they want. And they're not just folks in diaspora that know what the people of Afghanistan that are living in America want. They are in touch with folks in Afghanistan. There are a lot of great women's rights leaders right now that are out there that are constantly talking to the women all over Afghanistan. These groups are connected. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of women's rights groups across Afghanistan, and they talk to each other. Now, they don't all get along like anybody else. Any parties or groups, they all want to vie for the most important status, but there are some really smart ones. And I think they need to talk especially to people who have grown up in Afghanistan, not people who have been here for 40 years and went back and worked for a year or two, and not people who have never been to Afghanistan. You need to talk to people, especially the younger women who live there, who were born in the 1990s or the 2000s, and have a really good understanding of what it was under the Taliban, what it was like with freedom and human rights, even though it was dangerous in a war zone, and what it's like now, and those who escaped most recently. That'll give you the perspective you need to understand how evil the Taliban is and how they are not going to change. But these people exist. Those of us who work with them every day, we know who they are. We can put them in the room, but I think we have to do it in a safe way. I wouldn't be bringing them in front of Congress to do open sessions. There are plenty of Taliban agents all over America. There are people that are whitewashing them, cheerleading for them, who have economic deals with them or want more economic deals with them, or will get paid money. So we've got to be careful to protect these folks as well, because they still have family all over Afghanistan who would be hunted down. So I think that's an important part. They had to have grown up in Afghanistan and know what it is like and know what's been lost. And there are a lot of I talk to them all the time. This is what I've been doing for 3.5 years. Not many of them want the United States to come back to the country and do this for them. The majority of them, man, woman, and child, want the United States to make it easier for them to retake their country and reset their democracy and regain their human rights. But we're doing a lot of things in our policy that are hurting them, making it harder for them. So, I would say that's the message you're probably going to hear. We don't need your soldiers. We might need some military support and some intelligence support, maybe even some air support, but through drones. None of these things are hard, expensive, or costly, or putting anybody at risk in the U.S. Military. So I think there's ways to help, and we should be listening to those who actually have a plan for what comes next. If you're talking to people that just want to go to war, kill all the Taliban, then and then figure out what happens next. Well, we've been down that road a couple times. We know what happens next. More chaos, no government. Pakistan will reinsert itself and take over. So we have got to change this cycle. We can't do it for a third time. We've got to be smarter about it. And I don't think many Afghans want us to just let a war unfold. They have been through it enough. They want this to be done the smartest way possible. So use all of the tools that we have at our disposal.
Yeah. The Taliban are too good at scattering and finding places where we can't get them. And that's why they exist today, is because every senior leader in that government right now was over in Pakistan, where we couldn't go into that territory to get them.
Yep.
And they'll just do that again. I mean, it's the easiest border crossing to make. Like, you know, it doesn't even exist to some people. I don't know if you read, I have it over there, Pashtana Durrani's Last to Eat, Last to Learn. Excellent book. And she grew up in a refugee camp in Pakistan, but her father was the Khan of the Durrani tribe, the Baraksai Durrani tribe, I want to say. I'm going to make sure I get that right when I'm doing this. But she now is the Khan of that tribe. First female Khan ever in Afghanistan. She is a badass of epic proportions. But she talks about, you know, after the fall, how she had to navigate that border. And there were just these like family places where they knew, oh, you get across here. It's not simple, you know, it's a mountainous border, but like that's nothing when you got to go save your life. You find that place, you go, there's she calls it, it's like they named it after their family relative. It's a great book. Amazing book. And she is somebody who I think needs to be in that. No, I shouldn't name her either, but she's just an incredible young woman. I think so highly of her. And there are so many women like her who fought like hell to get to the places they were, who put themselves in danger, who didn't care, you know, because to them their country is what matters and their countrymen. And the strength of the Afghan people is just, it's unbelievable. What about, let's shift a little bit to Congress. The last thing I want to ask you about is, you know, Congress is going to come in. We still don't know what that's going to look like today. Maybe by the time that this airs, there will be a definitive answer. But how likely do you think it is that they will take up, you know, the Afghan Allies Protection Act and the Afghan Adjustment Act next year? And how important is it that they do?
I'm not hearing much out of the Senate as far as caring about Afghanistan. I think the House will probably take the lead on that. A lot more Afghanistan war veterans in there who know a lot of the members of the refugee and asylum groups that are here. So I think it's critical that we, even if it's not just taking up an old piece of legislation, just draft something new that works. If it looks like the Republicans are going to hold both houses and the White House, this is the time to craft one that gets all of our people, all of our partners, all of our allies safety and the ability to go to work. I mean, these are hardworking people. Let's make sure that's possible, and they can start taking care of their families and settling in if they're not going back. And if they are going to go back, then, you know, that's fine too. But we should be able to come up with some targeted legislation that the White House is happy with and meets the requirements and moves the system forward. So if it's too hard to drag up old stuff, then just pull out the right pieces and do it bit by bit. Prioritize who we help, get those Afghans and the help they need, and keep moving forward quickly on it. If we wait around and make this a big food fight and becomes a partisan issue, and they're, you know, Congress is fighting the White House, it's, you know, four more years will go by, and we'll be no better for it. We'll still have a bunch of asylum seekers around the world that have earned a little bit of a normal life. There are people still sitting in Indonesia. I followed some of the groups that are still stuck there for years. Yeah. Not just since 2021, for way before that. And they're still stuck in these camps. I mean, I
totally forgot about that. Yeah, that was like, what, 2009 or something. I can't remember what
I can't
year,
even remember.
but
I had to look up when they first go. I've still watched them. All these years of protesting. We can't do that. We have got to be better than that. And I think there's enough veterans in the Congress that should be able to say, hey, let's just do the basic stuff. This doesn't have to be a Cadillac. Let's just make a Yugo, get from point A to point B, and then we can burn that car and build a new one in legislation to get the next group through. Let's just triage and move these folks through. If we can't do a blanket issue, then don't do it in a blanket way. Let's take it case by case, group by group. We know who they are. We've had 3.5 years to look at all these organizations, have been vetting and double looking at who all these folks are. Start with the easy ones, get it knocked out.
from your mouth to God's ear. I hope that all can make its way out in the coming year, and I think that would just make so many people's days. What else is there? Anything else that I haven't asked you about that you think is important that the next administration, the next Congress should be examining regarding Afghanistan?
I think there's one other piece that I didn't hit on at the beginning, why this is important. 800,000 Afghanistan war veterans. They're very, very damaged, crushed by this action and how we've treated it. And a lot of them fought in Iraq as well, which is, somehow turned out better, but now they're regressing into, 9-year-old girls being up for weddings and marriage. Again, more gender apartheid spreading, right? So I think for if nothing else, I hope the administration and Congress takes on solving some of the Afghanistan issues and resolving them and changing our policy to help the people of Afghanistan have a chance, because it'll help the mental health of all those veterans. And that's my other passion that I work on. And I don't want to see any more veterans take their lives because of what happened here. There's so many. I can't keep up with all of the veterans who are suffering from this. I'm just overwhelmed as an individual trying to see what's going on and check on people. I can't, I wrote a song about checking on your buddies, and I don't have the bandwidth anymore to check on all these different people. We've got to stop this crisis. We're probably up to 40 suicides a day. It's unsustainable. It's going to hurt our recruiting capability and our retention capability. And it just hurts the morale of the country, not just the military, to have that kind of open sore. And a lot of people are talking about this. I just think that's a key consideration to solving and resolving some of the Afghanistan stuff. Do it for no one else. Do it for the veterans who served there and their families, so that they know it was worth it. They know it was honorable. They know we did the best we could on everything we did. And to know that evil shouldn't triumph. Go arrest Haqqani tomorrow. I would love to see a Tier 1 unit just pop in and pop out, and this guy is sitting in Gitmo. I don't think that we need to close that prison for anything. Store terrorists there until they are expired. I don't care. It's cheap. Who cares? They're living on a tropical island. They should be happy, right? I just think we've got to do something to correct some of the problems we've created for our veterans, or it will trickle down. More and more generations are going to be affected by this, and that hurts our ability to fill the ranks and make people see service as honorable. We can't have that. It's unsustainable. So I just want to see that changed. I think that matters. I don't want to see one more life taken. I don't want to see one more family, missing their son or father or uncle or brother. Or their sister or their daughter or their aunt. I mean, it's crazy that we still haven't figured this suicide problem out. But that's a big piece of it. How we left Afghanistan has affected people from the 4-star rank down to the private have been affected by it, and not in a good way. So.
Yep. Oh, 100%. I see it all the time. It breaks my heart, and it that just the whole the entirety of our effort to counter veteran suicide needs to be revamped under the next administration. We always talk about what an important issue it is, but I feel like nothing gets done that actually makes a difference, and it's just every year you're waiting for the numbers to come out.
There's so much we could do is what's frustrating. I'm out here with a grassroots movement of musicians and nonprofit organizations and partners and people who care about it, using a music concert in Nashville to bring synergy to this problem. Why not just make a task force? Congress slap some money down, bring together a task force of a few of the smartest folks in the business for suicide prevention, and let them rip it up. Let them go across the country and reinforce what works good and get rid of what doesn't work good. The VA needs a complete overhaul probably, but they can't do it alone. The DoD, it's not their mission. They go win wars. Taking care of the soldiers afterwards, the VA's mission, but we're still losing active duty military people. I would just set aside a chunk of change out of the Congress, form a task force that's given 3 years and a bunch of money to go make changes and put the money where the right people are. Whoever's making the most success in this, get them together and build a grassroots nationwide network of people who are helping to prevent it. And make sure they all have enough money and they all have enough people, and they all have enough therapists and they all have enough horses, whatever it takes to turn this around. If we can't reverse this, this is a cost of war. We will feel this cost of war, and it'll be a steeper cost next time because we won't have enough people.
There's definitely a lot, it's something that thrives in quiet, and I feel like that's, suicide thrives in silence, right? And I've heard too many times about veterans seeking assistance and active duty service members seeking mental health assistance and not being able to get it because we don't have time today, or whatever. There's just, and then it adds up. There are a number that I have heard from, and that's unacceptable. That problem needs to be addressed immediately. Not here are some pills so you can go feel, but no, talk to people. There was a great, I don't know if you've read Bravo Company. I'm trying to remember who Kesling, I think, was the author, but he writes about this effort after Bravo Company left the Argonne, and it was a really hard deployment. But the VA sent some therapists, and there was this big get together where everybody was all in the same place, and it was a weekend of kind of like intensive, fun activities, but also some like hard conversations about the things that people have been dealing with for the years that they were separated. And I thought that was brilliant. And then everybody left with a copy of everyone else's phone number. So you're in touch with your unit again, and, exchanging stories, and there are therapists there. I thought, man, that's a model. It's like you said, there are models that are successful. We see VSOs doing great work. And I think that just needs to be promoted and expanded.
Absolutely. There are so many groups doing so many great things. They're really good at the therapeutic side of getting people back to manageable. There's never a normal after war, but there's a manageable. Yeah. But they all are really bad at fundraising. And they have to spend all of their time fundraising instead of taking care of people. If we had some kind of congressional or White House task force that had a big pot of money, and they went out and they found every single group that's doing great things and just top them up and help them increase their throughput, that's all we have to do. You can't speed up the VA. Too many bureaucrats. You can throw all the money you want at that. You are not going to speed it up. You might be able to fire your way to speeding it up, but then the union rules will kick in. So good luck with that. But I think the nonprofits and the VSOs and the charities across this country that are doing great work, just reinforce it. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Just find them and support them. That's what we're doing with our concert in Nashville. We're bringing together some of those great folks so that foundations and philanthropists and donors can meet them and hear what they do and go, hey, I want to be your partner on this. You're getting something done. I mean, this isn't hard. I'm doing this in Nashville with three buddies and an iPhone, and we're putting something like this together with no money. I mean, if our Congress or White House can't build a task force to do this, I'm going to do it, and I'll prove you can do it without money.
Good.
I mean, come on, man.
If anybody can, Jason, it's you. So
it's crazy.
I love it. Yeah, I'm excited for everything that you've been a part of. I mean, you're touching on so many of the important things that need to be addressed. So I just appreciate you for all of that, for keeping all of these important initiatives at the forefront. It's not an easy task by any means, and it's just vital. So thank you for coming on. Thanks, you have written basically a policy paper for the next administration on here's what happens next, and I very much appreciate your expertise.
Well, thanks. I've had, as the great poet Post Malone said, I had some help on this, and
oh God,
and I appreciate everybody who follows me out of sheer curiosity half the time, I'm sure, but because these things matter. Yeah.
They do matter, and I appreciate you being here to talk about them, and I appreciate everybody for listening. And if you have questions about other aspects of what's happening next year, I can tell you there will be an episode on the SIV program, an episode on the reunification struggles. So there are more things coming, and if there's more that you want to know about, send me a message, send Jason a message. Jason will probably write you maybe a Twitter thread about it. I don't know. I can see that happening. But yeah, there we can get questions. That'll be the great thing, I think, over the next period is as more people are tapped, there's more ability to start getting questions answered and really talking about what's important and hoping that it gets heard. So thanks for being part of that, Jason. It's always good to be part of the positive momentum, right? I heard someone the other day just say, I'm just being optimistic about it. And I was like, yeah, I like that. So thanks for being optimistic, everybody. And Tasha Kaur,
awesome.
And hope to see you again soon.
Thanks.